How do you convince a landlord to allow you to run a business in his business?
Most landlords don't like being landlords, and that's the truth of the matter. If you own a property and I see that your property has been listed to be rented for 30 plus days and is still not rented, you're my perfect candidate to reach out. You're buying technically a year worth of time to own this asset. And once you enhance it, now you can sell smaller blocks of time of that 12 months. The biggest mistake that I see a lot of hosts make is that they'll go look for a property and hope that the right guests come to them. We don't allow parties in any of our properties. I started in the short-term rental space now 6 years ago. It's crazy.
Hey guys, so today we have a specialist in a strategy that many people have not been able to master. Not only that he's been able to master this strategy, he lives by what he preaches, and that's something that is not available consistently. So I have a gentleman here whereby within the short-term accommodation space, not only that he's mastered it, he's become an operator, and even becoming an operator, he decided to give back and teach a lot of students how to change and transform his lives. So I want to introduce you to Ivan, whereby Ivan, tell the guys a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you for having me. First and foremost, I appreciate you for bringing me on. Yeah, like you said, I started in the short-term rental space now 6 years ago. It's crazy because time flies. But started in rental arbitrage. It was my way into getting into real estate. Like many people, they want to get into the real estate space, but they don't know like what vehicle. You know, so many ways. You can go wholesaling, you can go flipping, you can go so many things. For me at the time, the easiest and less, I guess, money-intensive way to get in was arbitrage. Okay. Right, so I started that. We grew in our first year to like 12 units with arbitrage in Charlotte, North Carolina. And ever since then, to this day, we still have some of those units, and we've been able to grow it pretty good.
Fantastic. So for the guys that don't know what arbitrage is, do you mind just breaking it down for them so they have a little bit of understanding?
Absolutely. So rental arbitrage is really, like renting a property. Normally you rent a property that you would normally live in, right? But you rent it out for, say, 12 months at a time. And then with arbitrage, you do the same thing, but then you sublease technically. But before you sublease it on Airbnb, you furnish it, you enhance the product, right? So when you rent a property, say $1,500, it's unfurnished and all of that, that's the worth, that's the value of that property. But then when you add furniture, little amenities, your kitchen is full, it has all the things that you need. Now that value comes up because it's, kind of turnkey, ready to go. So then what you do is when you're doing rental arbitrage is you're buying technically a year worth of time to own this asset. And once you enhance it, now you can sell smaller blocks of time of that 12 months and sell it to someone who wants to stay there just a couple of nights. And that's what rental arbitrage is. It's kind of like the methodology of like when kids go and buy from Costco a box of chocolates and then they buy it for really cheap and then they sell the individual piece of candy for more than what it cost them is really what it is.
See, listen guys, look at the way he's broken it down for you. So this is what I love about Ivan, where he takes something complex and he's able to break it down into small segments. But my question to you, Ivan, is really how do you convince a landlord to allow you to run a business in his business?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a question that's evolved, right? Back then when I got started, it was way easier, and because it wasn't as prevalent. Not that many people knew about the Airbnb space and all of that, so it was easier. However, now you can argue that it is more known, therefore people know what to expect. But it's very easy, man. Like there's landlords that most landlords don't like being landlords. And that's the truth of the matter, right? So if you own a property and I see that your property has been listed to be rented for 30 plus days and is still not rented, you're my perfect candidate to reach out to because I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Landlord, I see that your property hasn't been rented for 30 days. How about we approach this in a different way where I can help you get the property furnished and then we'll list it on Airbnb. I'll manage the property. You'll make the same amount that you make that you want to rent it for, but now you don't have to worry about vacancies, you don't have to worry about marketing, you don't have to worry about toilets and none of that stuff. and we'll handle it from it. Well, not toilets; they'll still manage toilets, but in essence, they don't have to go through the normal headaches of being a landlord because now someone else is taking responsibility for it.
So you're approaching this from like a problem-solving capacity. So even within this strategy, you still are solving a problem for a landlord.
Yeah.
So who takes the liabilities, like if the toilet breaks and stuff? Is that your responsibility, or do you manage to let the landlord still keep the basic kind of responsibilities?
Great question. Yeah. So they still get it's their toilet, it's their washing machine. If anything electric or something they still handle all of that. But their property is usually going to be taken way more taken care of because my business as an Airbnb host is going to depend upon the property being in good shape, in good condition. Versus if you rent it out to a regular rental, you might not see that property for 12 months. And when you do show up there, there's a lot of things that are damaged. Right? So it's creating a win-win situation between a landlord and me as an operator if I'm taking on someone else's property to add it to my portfolio. It's a partnership in the end of the day. It's not a landlord-tenant relationship at that point. It's more so a partnership in that they're bringing the property, I'm bringing the operations to make sure that they're able to get paid what they need and not have to worry about ever again finding tenants.
So I just didn't even think about this. Like typically your house is kind of getting an upgrade.
Yeah.
Like I said, the way I've never had a rental pass back to me in a way where I didn't have to go in and do like basically 4 renovations.
Yeah.
And the first time I did like short-term accommodation, I didn't even know it was called Airbnb. I took out a mortgage, I did the BRRRR, the monthly payment was higher than what the tenant was paying, and I had to figure out a way to do stuff.
Yep.
I put a Q card in the hospital, just thinking I'm going to get a tenant. And then this Indian doctor called me and said, hey, do you mind if multiple people stay in the house? We have 18-week contracts, and could you provide us a bed and furnishing? And I'll pay you up front. And as soon as he said he could pay me up front, that was over. Because no one's paid up front. We're not even guaranteed that a tenant will pay within 12 months.
Right.
So that was like in 2005. I did that for 2 years. And like my biggest challenge was like really the furniture, like picking the right furniture for the right people. But the arbitrage was something that I never thought about. Even though I managed a lot of homes, I never thought about how would I have got the individuals for short-term accommodation. So talk to me about obtaining client, attracting the right people to go, because it is like you're running a hotel.
Right.
So
100%.
How do you go about that?
So going about it is simple when you have in mind the person that you are trying to attract. Okay. So for instance, majority of my business revolves currently to cater towards working travelers and travel nurses. Okay. So understanding what they need on their day-to-day thing, like they're spending a ton of time working, especially like nurses, they're having 12, 14, 15-hour days. Yep. They just want a place that they can lay down and, rest and watch maybe a little bit of TV, but they're not necessarily spending a ton of time. They just want a comfortable, safe place to go to. A lot of these nurses are females too, so I have to keep in mind safety and all these things. So the biggest mistake that I see a lot of hosts make is that they'll go look for a property and hope that the right guests come to them versus looking for properties that attract the guests that they want to, have. Yep. So if I don't want, if I don't want to host, pets and stuff like that, like I want to make sure that there's nothing about my property that would attract a pet, like showcasing that there's a pet, pet area in the community. Like if I don't want pets, then there's no reason for me to do that, right? So it's kind of understanding that it's like getting properties for your guests versus getting guests the property that you already got.
So this is why, like I said, you're a true operator and a business person because you understand your avatar. Yeah. I think most people I've met, they've just done it and I'm hoping for the best. Right. And then you have all like these kind of people holding parties in their place and they're desperate. Yep. So how did you learn that skill? Like how did you kind of you started, but you're operating at a different level in regards to skill set. So how did you learn to run that type of business? I
think that it's more so understanding human behavior, right? Okay. At the end of the day, like I know that if I want to repel certain activities, I need to showcase something that we do that most hosts don't do. Like we don't allow parties in any of our properties. Well, until now, we just launched one that can have some sort of activities. But in our apartments, we don't want any type of parties. We don't want to get reached out by management letting us know that there's 17 people in this studio apartment, right? So something that we do is to kind of repel those kind of activities is that when you're scrolling through our pictures towards the end, you'll see that there's a security camera, and then we advertise it more as like a safety. So it's a double entendre on it, that for a female nurse, they're gonna know that there's security in the building, so that they feel safe. But for someone who's trying to do that things that they're not supposed to, parties, they're gonna be like, oh, this is not it. I'm not gonna throw a party. I'm not gonna invite extra people that I don't have approval for because there's security, right? So understanding those different nuances and understanding human behavior, you can attract and repel what you do and don't want.
That's brilliant. So that's something, that level of creativity is phenomenal. I want to talk about the numbers. So for anyone that's listening to this, how hard is it to get into the space, and what does it look like in regards to startup cost to get into the short-term accommodation?
So if you're doing it the rental arbitrage route, which is what I did when I first got started, depending on where you're at, right? So you can call it whatever first month's rent is, plus to furnish, let's say, a one-bedroom apartment, which is what I would, if you're just getting started, I would encourage you to get a one-bedroom studio apartment if you can. It would cost you about $5,000 at most to just get it all furnished and all that. I've started, properties for $3,000 just to furnish it. And that's with every king size bed. Obviously, these smaller apartments don't have like a dining room per se. So nothing crazy, but just enough to make sure that it's comfortable. You're spending the money wisely in the different parts, and sleeping experience is the main thing that we don't skip on. So $5,000, I would say, is safe to go about and doing it. But to get started, honestly, I would encourage people not to go the rental arbitrage route, but rather go the property management route, and then pivot to rental arbitrage if they don't accept it. You want me to tell you how to go about that?
You have to tell me about that.
Yeah. So basically, let's say you're a landlord, like I said earlier. You're trying to rent out your property. You haven't been successful in doing so. It's been on Zillow for 30 days or whatever, and I say, hey, Mr. Landlord, I see your property hasn't been rented. How about if we try a different route, where you not only get tenants in there, but you make more money. So what you would need to do is, all you have to do is furnish your property. You just buy furniture. I'll help you through that process, and I'll manage the day-to-day activity, so you're not involved. You're just investing a little bit more on the property to get more money. Would you be opposed to that? Sometimes they'll say, no, I don't want to spend more money on the property. I'm good. And then that's when I would pivot and say, okay, how about if I just pay you what you're asking for, and I'll furnish it, and you just, you'll get your monthly drip, whatever. But now I approached you first in helping you make more money versus me trying to take your property for me to make money, right? So I come in leading with trying to help you make more money. And then as a manager, as a property manager or like operations guy for the Airbnb, I'll still make, 20% or whatever it is. So that's what I'm leading my students into, leading with property management first, because it's an easier pitch, and then you're helping them, you're not asking. And then if they say no for whatever the reason, it's still good, right? I'll just furnish it myself.
So that's a good, in my area, it starts at 20%, and then you get sold tiers, and it goes all the way up to like 35, 40%, depending on how
involvement,
And I think to myself, that's really good margins, to be honest, without kind of putting out the outlay, and it gives you the opportunity to learn as well. So that's a fantastic way how to scale. So talk to us about, you're from Florida originally. And you decided to scale your business. Were you doing that in Florida? Or?
No.
And then you decided to, how did you kind of launch and decide to scale your business, and why?
So I've always, like I said, I always wanted to be in the real estate space. I just thought that, like everyone else, you had to have a bunch of money to get into real estate and be able to do it. So when I moved from Miami to Charlotte, North Carolina, is when I launched my Airbnb business at the same time. I was in the insurance industry prior to that. I managed an Allstate agency. We grew an agency from zero to like $3 million book of business. And then I actually moved to Charlotte with a job security to be able to apply for my first investment property, and all that good stuff happened. But it was simultaneous. I moved to Charlotte with the intention to take that Airbnb business to the next level, and actually locked up my first property, my first apartment, sight unseen from Miami to move into Charlotte. And that eventually that apartment became the first Airbnb, technically. Wow. So we moved out of that one apartment. It was already furnished with a bunch of our own stuff. Yeah. So it took me maybe $2,000 to get it up and running. Yep. And that's what became my first Airbnb.
So why North Carolina? Because I everyone tells me great things about North Carolina. Yeah. And everywhere I go, it's like, even guys that are investing, wholesaling, they live in different states, and it seems to be a very, very lucrative hot area. So tell us what's going on in North Carolina.
So, the fact that it's lucrative and it's an awesome location for expansion and investing and all of that, that came afterwards. The reason why I picked North Carolina was honestly nothing other than I knew that I didn't want to raise my family in Miami. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it was just my wife and I. We didn't have any kids at the time. Mm-hmm. But we were just looking for a place to raise children. Sure. But our precursor of where we would move to, we looked into Texas, we looked into different locations, but the common denominator is like, where would we congregate? What church would we congregate in? Okay. And it just so happens that Charlotte is where Elevation Church is, and Pastor Stephen Furtick's, church is, the main campus is there. And we had been consuming his, we would watch, we called him our online pastor, even though we had our church at home and all that, but we would still like watch the sermons online. And then it just occurred to us like, oh, where is Elevation Church? Yeah. We didn't even know it was in Charlotte, honestly. And we looked it up. Oh, it's Charlotte. Oh, it's like a 10-hour drive. So we set out to drive up one weekend, like right after work. We got into our car and drove up for 10 hours. Yep. And then we had set up like some showings with a realtor and stuff. To this day, it's still my realtor. Yep. So that's how that came about. It wasn't because, it's North Carolina. Okay. There's a lot of movement happening. And that's when we decided. It just, God made it to be that. Amen. Because, he does all things perfectly.
So
but
that's a great segment to my next part. So share with us how faith impacts your life, business, family. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about that, because many people don't get to meet Christian entrepreneurs. Yeah. And that's something where, like, even how you just spoken about your business, how it's impacted you, share with the guys of how that's impacted your life.
Yeah. So, I would say when you're a Christian and I guess when you have a relationship with God, it's going to ooze out in every way, right? Like we can have a conversation, just you and I, or with someone that I just met, and it's just going to come out naturally. So it's when you're doing business as a Christian, it's going to also be the same, right? But and in my marriage, relationship wise, like Jesus is the center of our marriage. Therefore, anything that I've understood throughout the years of being Christian and congregating at church and being around other strong Christians is that whatever you put God in the middle of, it's gonna flourish, and it's like something that you can relieve the burden off of. So when things are going good, it's His glory. Yep. When things are going bad, it's for Him to figure out. And you're just kind of like the vessel or the instrument that is using to move forward, whatever that is. So it's my faith is crucial in that it allows me to not have stress, even when things are going very bad. And it allows me to partner with God and knowing that, hey, whatever it is His will, that be done, and not me, not my own efforts. And of course, that doesn't mean I'm going to just chill and wait for God to do things. But, the Bible says faith without works is dead. Yeah. So I have the faith, but I'm putting in the work. Yep. And then therefore, results come from me having that faith in Him.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So talk about what's next for Ivan in regards to, like, you're operating this space. Mm-hmm. We've got a change of president. You're in North Carolina. What's next for you? How do you see like the next 12 months?
So something that I've been in the transition of doing was, like I mentioned, I started in Airbnb doing arbitrage, and that's what I call phase one of when I teach my students, is phase one of the entrepreneurial real estate journey to get in the door. Second phase for me was to be able to own property, buy properties, and Airbnb them. And then eventually you move into the phases where you're investing into other things and all of that. But for me right now is like we're acquiring properties instead of arbitraging. We've been on that for the last year or so, and buying them, furnishing them, getting them all ready. Because you want to be in the arbitrage space only for a little bit. So like literally you're in. You don't want to be building this huge portfolio, which students of mine have done. They've gotten way more units than me. I'm talking about 100, 200 units. arbitrage.
Yep.
And that's cool. It's cash flow. It's great. You can technically sell the business and because they're all held under an LLC, so you can technically sell it and it's a cash flowing asset.
Yep.
However, it's not you're not building wealth because you don't own it, right?
Yep.
So you're subject to the leases and all these different things. So for me right now, it's really building the portfolio. I want to get into development. Is something that I've had in my heart for a while. Getting into development and luxury development is something that I've kind of gravitated towards because I just love. I actually studied architecture in college for a little bit before I pivoted.
Okay.
So I've always liked design and all of that. It's kind of a full circle moment. The reason why I didn't go with architecture or stick through it was because when the classes that were the math required classes, I was like, no, I'm not going to take no trigonometry or all these math classes. I'd rather just stick to design, which is why I pivoted to graphic design. But long story short, I've always liked construction and all that. My aunt was an architect, and she would take me in Dominican Republic. She would take me to the job sites, and I would help put the concrete or mix the concrete. It's always been like a cool thing about it. But I think that's what's next. Development and staying in the real estate space, of course, and building something meaningful.
I know you're going to be great at it. And like I said, I've seen you, the way you've moved as an operator, super humble, kept your feet on the ground, giving, because a lot of people, we do stuff, you're giving God glory as well. Those are all strong attributes that I admire and I commend you for. And I'm excited about your future, man.
Thank you so much.
So tell the guys, where would they find you? So if they want to reach out to you, I don't know if you're still coaching at the moment.
Yep.
I'm sure that you're still kind of maybe raising private capital to help you expand.
Yeah.
Where can they find you and connect with you?
The best place to find me is going to be Instagram. That's where I'm most active. My YouTube channel is still up there. We have some content that's going up with some podcasts that we've recorded that I haven't taken super serious because I've been focusing on the business. Okay. But yeah, Instagram, coaching side, I'm only coaching select few. Okay. I used to do the group settings like maybe you were in, but now I'm just doing one-on-ones. So it's, you have to go through an application process and stuff like that. So it's not as, plug and play as it, but it's more attentive and a little bit higher ticket too. So if you don't have the capital, it's not. At this time, I'm really trying to focus on my business. And if I'm going to help someone, they have to be really committed and be able to filter out those that are committed is really like, okay, you put your money where your mouth is type of thing, and then kind of go from there. Yeah,
and I know definitely you're providing a ton of value. So like I said, having the opportunity, I said I did this like 2003, 2005. There was no one like yourself. I see you as like an insurance policy. So whatever it costs to kind of go through someone that is actually doing this full time, that's like gold dust. That's like a hack within itself. So I want to say thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure.
I appreciate it, man, and I'm excited about your future, man.
Thank you, brother. Absolutely. Anytime.